Ladies and gentlemen, we shall be starting the program in 5 minutes. May we request the student community to please put your mobile phones on silent mode. Thank you. Good morning. Today, the International Day of the Commemoration in memory of the victims of the Holocaust. Shalom. We welcome you to the Conrado Benitez Hall of the Philippine Women's University, the first university for women in Asia founded by Asians. Honored guests, may I request everyone to please rise for the national anthem of the Philippines and Israel. Thank you very much. Kindly be seated. For the introductory message, may I call on the President of the Philippine Women's University, Mr. Marco Alfredo Benitez.
Your Excellencies, notable members of the Foreign and Local Diplomatic Corps, the Jewish Association of the Philippines, Israel Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines, members of the Quezon and Quirino families, distinguished guests, school administrators, faculty members, dear students, good morning. It is with great honor that we host the 75th Memorial of the Holocaust, a time of great tragedy for our Jewish brothers and sisters, but at the same time, a rallying point in history, which propelled and shaped who they are as a nation today. We thank Ambassador Rafael Harpaz for this opportunity. Today's memorial not only commemorates the tragic events that befell them as a people 75 years ago, it also gives us an opportunity to remember the heroic act of kindness and empathy for his fellow human beings, which allowed then President Quezon to declare an open-door policy, making the Philippines a safe haven for Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi oppression. It is important to remember that at that time, this act of President Quezon was not simple nor easy, with many of the country's allies and even world powers refusing to allow entry to Jewish refugees for various reasons, from racism to protectionism to fear of inciting the ire of a world power. But despite this, and despite warnings from other nations not to proceed, President Quezon stood up for this basic value of kindness and the desire to protect the dignity of human life. Today, despite technology's rapid advancement and globalization bringing people closer than ever before, there is a disturbing trend towards intolerance and the lack of openness to other races and cultures. Oppression, both emotional and physical, is again on the rise. In some parts of the world, discrimination, whether against gender, race, or religion, again expresses itself. In extreme cases, there is even outright disregard for human life for the sake of advancing personal and political interests. We live in a time where technology has made life so convenient, but unfortunately may have also put us out of touch with the basic values that make us human: empathy, kindness, and concern for the sanctity of human life. Today's Holocaust Memorial, which for us Filipinos highlights then President Manuel L. Quezon's act of welcoming Jewish refugees to our shores, should be a reminder of our duty as human beings to uphold these basic human virtues and values, particularly for the oppressed, marginalized, and those unable to defend themselves. We should also remember that President Elpidio Quirino continued this policy in 1947, and that our country has welcomed waves of refugees to our shores even as far back as 1590, when the first Jews arrived in the Philippines after their expulsion from Spain. As an educational institution, PW was founded on core values such as personal integrity, familial solidarity, participation, and contribution to the good of the community. For 100 years, we have fostered an inclusive brand of education, respectful of cultural, religious, and racial diversity. We are proud of PWU's role during critical periods in our country's history, and today recall two young Jewish refugees, Margot Cassell and her cousin Lottie, who had spent memorable years of their childhood studying in these halls after their families fled Germany and sought refuge here in the Philippines in 1938 under President Quezon's open door policy. I had the great fortune of meeting Ms. Margot Cassell Prince Kestenbaum a couple of weeks ago when she made an informal visit to PWU with her family. And it amazed me how vivid her memories were of her teachers back then, when she was an elementary school student here more than 80 years ago. She told us about how her teachers taught her to value the culture she left behind by asking her to demonstrate the waltz with her cousin Lottie. Her classmates made her feel like one of them, so she insisted on wearing bakya, or the wooden clogs like they did during the war years, that she survived with the resilience she so admired among Filipinos. Salve Margot will forever be part of our history as we are part of hers. As a community, therefore, let us never forget that equally as important as teaching the skills and imparting the knowledge our students need for life after university, it is our responsibility to form them into better human beings. We deeply appreciate this opportunity to be part of a commemoration that draws us back to the primordial importance of human dignity, and at the same time reminds us of what it entails to be truly human. To end, allow us to show you a short clip about Salve Margot's recent visit and how she learned about the meaning of democracy here at PW. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, President Marco Alfredo Benitez. And now the film clip.
What I do remember is that even third graders sat in the student council. The idea of how do you teach democracy? You know, you don't go and teach democracy from the book. But we're going to have a party. And what do we need for that party? And so forth. So the classes elected delegates to the student council. And the student council, young as we were, you know, we talked about candies or ice cream or whatever we wanted, but these were decisions that we were part of as very young children. It is, you know, it's getting democracy with mother's milk, because then, you know, the carrying out and the responsibilities. So this was something I clearly remembered.
Thank you very much. At this point, may I call on His Excellency Rafael Harpas, Ambassador, Embassy of Israel, for the opening remarks. Ambassador Harpas.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the diplomatic community, dear students, members of the Jewish community, members of the Chamber of Commerce of Israel and the Philippines, Chargé d'Affaires of the United Nations, Mrs. Letty Hahn, the widow of Alfred Hahn, one of the Jewish refugees that were saved here in the Philippines. It's a great honor to have us here with us. It's really emotional to see still people from this era still alive here. I was planning to speak about Margot Pins, but I think President, you took everything that I had in mind. So I will tell you a story from the historic visit of President Duterte to Israel. We had the first ever visit of a Filipino president in Israel in September 2018. 3 days. The last leg of the visit was visiting the Open Door Monument, commemorating what President Quezon did, near Tel Aviv. And from then he left to Jordan. We arrived at the monument. We need to walk some 300 meters with all the motorcade of a president. And they took us directly to an elderly Israeli Jew, 90 years old, on a wheelchair. I didn't know who it is, with a Filipino caregiver behind. We took the president, they introduced us. The president bent to shake his hand, and the Israeli started speaking Tagalog. It was one of those Jews that were saved by President Quezon in 1939 that met the president. So a visit in 2018, historic visit, ends by meeting a Jew that was saved here in 1939. That tells you, I think, all the story. That's an amazing story. And President Quezon was unique. 1,300 Jews were saved by the open door policy here in the Philippines. And one of them, as was mentioned, was Margot Pins. She was here also 2 weeks ago when the Taal volcano erupted. She was here actually for the centennial anniversary of the ISM, and she visited the school. And today we are commemorating because it's the day of the liberation of Auschwitz. On 27th of January 1945, the Red Army of the Soviet Union liberated the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration and extermination camp. The Jewish people emerged from the largest killing field in history of humanity. The survivors didn't forget anything. More than ever, we remember with deep gratitude the day of the liberation, the entry of the Red Army into Auschwitz-Birkenau, and the immense sacrifice of the Allied forces. This event signified the beginning of the end of the atrocities that were committed by the Nazi regime against the Jewish people in a new era of hope for a better future, as validated 3 years after, in May 1948, when the State of Israel was established, the rebirth of the Jewish state. This year we are commemorating the 75th anniversary of the release of Auschwitz-Birkenau, and the United Nations has chosen the theme, 75 years after Auschwitz, Holocaust Education and Remembrance for Global Justice. Just last week, world leaders from across the world came to Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, to commemorate this historic and significant event. High-level representatives from 46 countries, including 27 presidents, 4 kings, 4 prime ministers, vice presidents, and foreign ministers gathered in one of the biggest conventions of world leaders and pledged their support and commitment to continuously educate and empower young people to keep the memory of the Holocaust alive. Through the years, since its adoption of the resolution that designated every 27th of January as an annual International Day of Commemoration in the memory of the Holocaust, the United Nations has continued to hold activities and ceremonies that educate and remind us to never tolerate injustice again and to help to prevent future acts of genocide. In the last few years, we have witnessed a rise in anti-Semitism in many parts of the world, especially in some of the biggest democracies in the Western world. This is in addition to a very strong anti-Semitism trend in some of the Muslim countries, including leaders of major Muslim states. The number of Holocaust survivors is decreasing every day, and in a decade or so, there will be very few of them to tell us the story to the younger generation. Therefore, there is an utmost importance to commemorate the International Holocaust Memorial Day every 27th of January. To quote the Nobel Prize laureate, the Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel, just as man cannot live without dreams, he cannot live without hope. If dreams reflect the past, hope summons the future. And you, the young generation which is here with us, you are the hope and you are the future. Thank you very much. Maramin Salaman. Toda Rabba.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Harpas. Thank you. And now, a very special number from our Dean, the College of Arts and Sciences, the Philippine Women's University, Dean Dr. Ramon Aquino, with Christopher Borella on the piano, a song, Avenue Melikim Nu. Dr. Aquino.
Ave
Dean Dr. Ramona Coima and Christopher Borella at the piano. At this point, I have the honor to call on, for his keynote message, Mr. Ayori Kato, UNFPA Country Representative, Chargé d'Affaires, United Nations, Philippines. Mr. Kato.
Thank you very much. His Excellency, Ambassador of Israel to the Philippines, Mr. Rafael Halpers, Deputy Chief of Mission of Israel to the Philippines, Ms. Yulia Lachinsky, host of today's event, President of Philippines Women's University, Mr. Benitez, ambassadors, other distinguished members of the diplomatic corps, distinguished guests, students, faculty members, ladies and gentlemen. Maganda magapo sa inyong lahat. Good morning to you all. Thank you very much for having invited me to read out the message of the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, for this year's International Day of Commemoration in memory of the victims of the Holocaust. Before I read out his message, please allow me to say a very few words from yours truly. 75 years ago on this day, the 27th of January, one of the concentration camps, the Auschwitz death camp, was liberated by the Allied powers. The United Nations that I work for was created in the same year, 1945, primarily to save the succeeding generation from the scourge of war, along with the promotion of human rights, justice, social progress, and sustainable development. 60 years later, in 2005, the United Nations General Assembly passed Resolution 60/7, designating today, January 27th, as the annual International Day of Commemoration in memory of the victims of the Holocaust, as mentioned by His Excellency Ambassador Halpers. The resolution reaffirmed that the Holocaust, which resulted in the murder of 1/3 of the Jewish people, along with countless members of other minorities, will forever be a warning to all people of dangers of hatred, bigotry, racism, and prejudice. Because the organization that I work for, United Nations Population Fund, or UNFPA, is working primarily on the promotion of sexual and reproductive health and gender equality. I would like to also add that among the 6 million Jewish people who perished, there were many wives, sisters, daughters, along with pregnant and lactating mothers who were killed basically because they were women, which pointed also to the feminized aspects to the Holocaust and denial of their reproductive health and rights and sexual violence. The International Holocaust Remembrance Day is a reminder to all of us as to what the human being is capable of doing to one another, including brutality, cruelty, and barbarity. In order to prevent that scale of heinous crimes and grave human rights violations, we have to remember what was done. We tell ourselves not to forget about that history. The same Resolution 67 of the UN General Assembly also rejects any denial of the Holocaust as an historical event, either in full or part. There are unfortunately many attempts made out there to deny the undeniable truth, and we need to collectively continue to fight such historical revisionism. Ladies and gentlemen, I just said today's International Holocaust Remembrance Day is a reminder to all of us as to what the human being is capable of doing to one another. But this also includes the act of moral courage, braveness, empathy, and humanity. As mentioned by His Excellency, the Ambassador Harpers, and President of the University, the Philippines has a special place in Holocaust Remembrance Day. I was very inspired that when I learned that the former president of this country, Mr. Quezon, in the midst of the fierce war against Japan, which I personally regret very much, sympathized with the persecuted Jewish people, issued tens of thousands of visas to them, and offered safe haven to more than 1,300 Jewish families to the Philippines so that they could escape from the Nazis. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, now with your kind permission, I would like to read out the message of Mr. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, on his behalf. On this day, we come together to remember one of the most heinous crimes of our time, the systematic killing of 6 million Jewish men, women, and children, and millions of others by the Nazis and their collaborators in the Holocaust. We pledge that we will never forget. We vow to tell their stories and honor them by defending everyone's right to live with dignity in a just and peaceful world. 75 years ago, the liberation of the death camps ended the carnage, but horrified the world as the full scope of the Nazis' crimes became clear. Out of these horrors, the United Nations was created to bring countries together for peace and our common humanity, and to prevent any repetition of such crimes against humanity. The resurgence of hatred in recent years, from violent extremism to attacks on places of worship, shows that the anti-Semitism, other forms of religious bigotry, racism, and prejudice are still very much with us. 75 years on, neo-Nazis and white supremacists are resurgent, and there are continued efforts to diminish the Holocaust and deny or downplay the responsibility of perpetrators. But just as hatred persists, so must our resolve to fight it. Today and every day, we commemorate the victims of the Holocaust by pursuing truth, remembrance, and education, and by building peace and justice around the world. End of quote. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We would like to request Mr. Ayori Kato to commence the candlelighting ceremony in memory of the victims of the Holocaust. May we request Mr. Kato to please go on stage to light the first candle. Thank you very much. To be followed by President Marco Benitez. Thank you. May we request the President of the Student Council of PWU, Rachel Ann Ferrer, to light the third candle. Thank you. May we call on the Executive Director, Jewish Association, Mr. Lee Blumenthal. Thank you very much. Deputy Chief of Mission, Yulia Ispirakov. And may we call on Ambassador Rafael Harpas. Thank you very much. And as the ambassador returns to his seat, may we request everyone to please rise for a moment of silence. Thank you. Please be seated. And now for the prayer, Rabbi Eliyahu Azariah. Oh, may we request everyone to please rise once again. Thank you very much.
God, full of mercy, who dwells in the heights, provide a sure rest upon the divine presence wings, within the range of the holy and pure, whose shining resemble the skies, all the souls of the 6 million Jews, victims of the Holocaust, who were murdered, slaughtered, burned, and exterminated for the sanctification of thy name by the Nazi assassins and their helpers from the rest. Therefore, Master of mercy will protect them forever from being the hiding of his wings, and will tie the souls with the rope of life. The everlasting is their heritage. The Garden of Eden shall be their resting room, and they shall rest peacefully upon their lying place. They will stand for their faith in the end of days, and let us say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, we are proud to present a film showing. There is a request that before we show the film, can we have a quick photo opportunity with our special guest right here on stage. This is something memorable, and we would not like to miss this opportunity. Thank you very much. Gladys, perhaps we can put some chairs in front so it will not be such a long or have people behind. Thank you very much. And now the film showing. Thank you.
Continuing the appeal against the building project in Lensdorf, where, according to the claimants, there is a mass grave in which some 200 Jews are buried. How many excavations were conducted in the area?
21.
And nothing has been found?
The area in question has been excavated, but the mass grave has yet to be found.
It's a very large area, it's hard to cover so much ground.
Yes, Appendix 32. In one testimony, a woman claims that she heard Jews screaming in front of her window in this area. Another one claimed that he saw a truck carrying Jews stop in this area here. Perhaps the historian would like to tell us where he wants construction halted, in this area or in that, or perhaps the entire town.
We ask that the freeze on the construction remains in effect until the grave is found.
With all due respect, this town needs to grow, and we have to step into the future and not linger in the past.
The victims should not pay for our inability to find the grave so far.
And so shouldn't the citizens of our town.
If it is not stopped, the entire area will be covered with cement and the graves will never be found.
Sir, the Austrian Ministry of Interior doesn't have the authority to delay the development any longer. If new evidence comes to light within the next 7 days, we'll be happy to examine it. No appeal will be accepted after that time.
מכירה את הפוליטיקאית הזאת? היא אנטישמית?
אנטישמית לא, יש לנו מקסימום 5 ימים להשיג ראיות.
אין ברירה, אנחנו מוכרחים לחפש בחסויות של 45.
אתה יודע שזה בלתי אפשרי.
אנחנו נפסיד בעתירה, הם זוממים לקבור את הפרשה, את לא מבינה את זה? זה המקום היחידי שלא חיפשנו.
אוקיי. אתה תקבל גישה חלקית. אם אתה תמצא משהו, אנחנו כבר נראה מה עושים. אתה יודע, נראה לי גם לא רע שקט הזה.
זה להחזיר אותה ל-BC.
לא, תשמע אותו לרעיון.
איזה רעיון?
הערוץ הגרמנים שולחים כתב לראיין אותך.
רינה, את טובה בדברים האלה, אני לא שולט בגרמנית.
הם רוצים אותך.
אין לי זמן לדברים האלה.
יואל, ראיון בטלוויזיה ייתן לנו עוד זמן. אל תשכח את החליפה.
I'll speak to you in German and you can answer me in English, okay?
In that case, I'll answer in Hebrew.
Will auf Hebräisch antworten, gibt es?
Kein Problem.
Herr Dr. Halberstam, lassen Sie uns mit der Frage beginnen, warum diese Debatte für Sie so wichtig ist. Es geht doch nur um ein Bauprojekt und ein paar Straßen.
בלילה שבין ה-24 ל-25 במרץ 1945 נרצחו כ-200 עובדי כפייה יהודים בשדות הכפר לנסדורף שבאוסטריה. איש מאנשי הכפר לא זוכר משום מה היכן בוצע הטבח. שני עדים שבאו להעיד על מיקום הטבח לאחר המלחמה, אחד שוטר מקומי והשני ניצול יהודי, נרצחו. לא מדובר ברצח שיטתי של הנאצים במחנות ההשמדה, אלא ברצח ספונטני על ידי אוכלוסייה מקומית שעד היום מכחישה את פשעיה בגיבוי לא פורמלי של השלטונות.
Und das wollen Sie nicht zulassen?
אני היסטוריון. כמו כל מדען, אני חוקר את האמת. הארכיאולוג מחפש שרידים מוחשיים. אני מחפש עובדות. האויב של הארכיאולוג היא האדמה שמסתירה את השרידים. אני נלחם בזמן שמסתיר את העובדות.
Ja, und in diesem Fall kämpfen Sie gegen die Österreicher, die Ihrer Ansicht nach die Wahrheit vertuschen.
תראי, גברתי, הנטייה של בני אדם היא לשכוח. התפקיד שלי כיהודי מאמין הוא לזכור.
Herr Dr. Halberstam, erzählen Sie uns doch ein bisschen von sich selbst.
אומר את האמת, אני לא אדם מעניין, אפילו משעמם.
Herr Dr. Halberstam, sind Ihre Eltern Holocaust-Überlebende?